Welcome to the Nest Show, the podcast that brings you insights into the crypto market, trading and investment experiences, and what we're looking forward to as we navigate the space together. Before we get started with the show, I want to thank our friends and sponsors over at Prime XBT, where many of our listeners have already signed up to trade by visiting the birbnest.com/PrimeXBT. Prime XBT is the most powerful trading platform offering immediate access to over 30 assets. Users may trade cryptocurrencies, Forex, commodities, stock indices, and much more, all from a single Bitcoin-settled account.
Birb Network is an interoperable DeFi ecosystem offering token pre-sales, staking as a service, project incubation, and much more. Visit thebirbnest.com/Birb. OnReach is a DeFi 2.0 toolkit for a safer, simpler, and stable DeFi experience. Learn more at thebirbnest.com/onreach.
And now for the show. What the Nest Show is. This is a podcast brought to you by the Birb Nest community, an independent crypto and Forex-centered trading community built to sharpen each other in capturing opportunities in the markets while protecting capital along the way. What this is not. Trading advice. We are not financial advisors, and you should not regard any information here or in the Nest Club as financial advice. You should always consult a licensed financial advisor before making any financial decisions.
Hey, welcome everybody to today's episode of the Nest Show podcast. My name is Adrian, and today we have a special guest. And this is Kevin of Linear Finance. How's it going, Kevin? How are you doing?
Good, man. How about yourself?
I'm really good. Thank you. Kevin is actually just, very generous already with his time while he's based, within the Hong Kong kind of like a district for Linear Finance, where many representatives kind of like just reside. But most importantly, we want our viewers and our listeners to understand what Linear Finance is about, right? Because well, there are many beautiful fancy words that we use to explain that, right? Whenever we go, for example, to the Linear Finance Twitter, bio, it says a cross-chain compatible, decentralized Delta One asset protocol that would let you create, manage, and trade exposures seamlessly and instantly. So let's say I'm a newbie. I just joined crypto, right? I have no idea what this Delta One, asset protocol is. So how could you describe it in some simple words for all the new people who are joining?
Yeah. So, we're a synthetic asset protocol. So essentially what that means is that you can come onto our site, our DApps, and get exposure to, I would say synthetic versions of crypto, of commodities, things like gold and silver, of currencies. Currently we have Euro and JPY. And indices, right? So what you're buying is you're not actually buying the underlying, but you can get price exposure. So we get prices from band protocol, okay? And essentially you can basically buy these. You can trade in and out of these synthetic assets with quite a large liquidity as well as with no slippage. So whatever you want to purchase, you purchase at the spot price. What band protocol comes, and you basically trade in and out of prices. And so we have an exchange setup where you can come and take a look at obviously the historical data as well as the exchange trading interface. So it's very similar to trading on a centralized exchange like Binance or FTX in that sense. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's, I've actually, used, the Linear Finance platform per se. And, so many times I actually log in into Builder, and I see all of the improvements as you go and catch up pretty much like with the trends or even establish the trends, within the DeFi scene. But the truth is, again, that if there are new people joining up, and we know that's just for a fact, there are more people joining, there are more people kind of like getting interested, in this Dogecoin pumps, right? And all of this kind of like transitions later and then just, kind of like spreads across the other markets. And most of those people are, again, new, inexperienced, they don't know how to behave. They don't know what this DeFi thing is even, right? So if we were to just go and shoot straight to the very basics, and kind of like understanding, DeFi 101, as I pretty much like called it. Let's explain to those new people, to those new visitors, viewers, very, very basic stuff about DeFi. To start with, like, how would you describe what the DeFi is to them?
Yeah, so I would think for the newcomers, I would say that DeFi is basically a new financial system. So what we have done, what we are working on, is to basically replicate the old financial system in the new world on blockchain. Okay, which means that one, it's open. Two, it's permissionless. And three, there's no intermediaries. At the end of the day, we just all function on smart contracts, right? So say in the old financial world, you need to have banks and you need to have intermediaries in place, and you would trust them to basically handle all your data and to do transactions, right? But with the old system, there's a lot of restrictions in place, obviously because of the regulatory restrictions, scalability restrictions, many type of restrictions of which we just don't. Well, we currently do not really have in decentralized financing. All right, decentralized finance, where it's essentially we just trust what we build into the code, into smart contracts. And with that in place, we're able to replicate many different elements, such as old finance. We have, how would I say it? We have lender borrowers. Okay, the first ones that actually started off this revolution was MakerDAO. Okay, then people like Compound and Aave. We also have DEXs. So instead of having centralized exchanges, we have decentralized exchanges with AMMs in place to basically market make on the tokens. People like Uniswap, before it was Bancor, PancakeSwap. All right. And then we also have people that make assets and derivatives. So similar to linear finance. Synthetics is another one. There's also a few other ones that are out there that are basically doing synthetic assets. And insurance protocols. So people like Nexus Mutual. Okay. So essentially what we're basically building out right now is essentially a whole new financial system which you can go ahead and place your money. You can lend, borrow, you can generate yield, very similar to having a savings account in the old world, right? You can trade crypto assets, and right now a big trend is trading traditional assets. So we have I would say we have protocols that do tokenized stocks, synthetic protocols like ourselves, which will soon be able to offer stocks, synthetic stocks. So I would say it is a kind of a new world order for people to get into, and it's basically freedom for your money, right? I mean, it's permissionless. There's no KYC. You just need a wallet address. You can have access, and I don't think you get that in the old world, in the old financial world. So I think that's basically what generally DeFi 101 is.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of truth in what you said. Mostly, because the entire variety of the DeFi services, those decentralized services, like you said, the lending, the borrowing, just staking, swapping, all of that, right? All of that works pretty much like on this kind of like how to call that, more efficient manner, right? Because apparently it happens that we don't need banks for that, right? We don't need banks anymore for that, and that people can organize themselves, within the help of of the blockchain technology, let's say, for the data transmission and whatnot, that we can organize ourselves to such an extent that we can create a financial space, financial service, which actually kind of like just apparently, again, is not only more efficient, but also gives you more returns, right? When you compare that with the bank savings. Like if you put your bank savings, put your savings into a bank, deposit to put it, I don't know what the rate to get, like 0.25, 1% in a year, right? Which combined anyway with the effective real inflation, with some countries up to 10% or even more, apparently you keep losing money. You just keep giving away those money because of the quantitative easing and whatnot again. So this decentralized kind of like service, I've been staking Lena, like the talking, like your finance, to all the viewers and listeners. I've been staking Lena since the very conception. I think it was September, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys went public, right? September.
Right.
Yeah. And ever since, I literally saw and somehow, well, passively, but participated, as the as the admirer, like admirer or visitor or just viewer, I was there for the entire time that Learn Your Finance developed, and so many versions of the builder, so many versions of the website, which looks so fantastic right now. Like this overall kind of like DeFi sphere was evolving very dynamic, in a very dynamic manner. And most importantly, what we kind of like have to understand, as those participants in this DeFi, is that it is really some new form of finance being shaped. That it's not just some virtual money. That it's not just like some virtual like tokens, coins, that let you buy drugs on the internet. We're actually taking a big leap into the financial future. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes to the fact that DeFi tends to be very not as an open and permissionless stuff, but it's also very transparent, right? So you actually really know where your funds are going and what they're being used for at any certain point in time. And really, the real big key risk here is obviously smart contract risk, right? So I would say you actually know what your risk kind of reward profile looks like in DeFi. And I think that's actually quite powerful for the users. So I think with DeFi, it's not just open and permissions, but it's also very transparent. So you actually know where your funds are at any point in time, whether you stake them somewhere and you have a proof LP token, and you kind of know what the vaults are doing and what the yield strategies look like. And it's very transparent on what your returns are, as well as your risk, right? Because realistically, a lot of it is just smart contract risk. If there's a bug or any type of failures, then that's the type of risk that you're taking. And so your risk return profile, at least you know about it. Okay. But in the real world, I, as myself, as many others in crypto can probably say, banks are just not your friend, right? I mean, you're getting what, like you mentioned, 25 basis points a year for saving in US dollars or your local currency. But in reality, the banks, what are the banks doing with your funds? They're probably doing out in other types of investments, and they're making a large amount of cash. They're making larger yields. And you can tell from what you see currently now in the financial world where they're putting their money, right? They're putting their money, Credit Suisse is out lending money to Greensill and, lending money out to hedge funds. And so the returns they're making on that are substantially large. And they're not sharing that with the investors or basically the shareholders or people who put the money in, right, and are funding these. It's because they have pricing power. They actually it's very centralized, right? All the banks are together and they basically can squash down the yields for individuals. But different in DeFi, right? You get your yields and it's spread around to the right amount of people through the smart contracts. And that's kind of really the beauty of it at the end of the day.
Yeah. So it does seem, to me that linear finance and not only, per the overall participation in the DeFi, let's say right now, that you guys are trying to solve one big matter, one big problem, right? Which is the centralization of the finance of this kind of like, the old financial system, as we will call that, and again, there are so many steps, so many kind of like just, that's such a big process. It doesn't happen overnight, right? It requires actually years and years of building, years and years of improving, because if we kind of like remember, all those crypto 2017, for how the entire infrastructure looked like, there were exchanges that had those stop losses, low risk management allowance, kind of like it literally was there all by alone, right? All by yourself. And you were there actually flipping, some virtual money with little use case back then, right? But we have now stepped up the game. We really have now entered the space, or should I say, entered the pace of the development, which we can really evolve into a global thing and global adoption. But what we mean by global adoption is not just Elon Musk accepting crypto for for Teslas, right, or for this Mars rovers or whatever's. We are really talking about somehow uniting that or writing DeFi, right? Decentralized finances into the overall global financial system. And for that, again, there has to be many kind of like progress episodes. And speaking of it, could you spill a bit on some of the most recent updates, some of the most recent upgrades that Linear Finance, presented?
Yeah. So, I think like you mentioned in 2017, 2018, the last few years for DeFi have seen substantial explosive growth. Right now we're probably sitting around 45 to 50 billion in TBL, and a large part of that is on Ethereum. And obviously with Solidity and the Ethereum blockchain, one of the most publicly used blockchains, and the one that has the biggest community and the most DeFi protocols on there, the ecosystem is extremely large. And with that, obviously comes with scaling issues, right? The ability to get more users, to get more transactions, and currently, right now, just the Ethereum blockchain is just not in the right place to handle that much, right? And so, which is why we see high gas fees. Okay, that plus obviously the popularity of Ethereum, of both Ethereum and Bitcoin, prices increasing, which means that transaction costs for individuals who use the Ethereum blockchain become quite expensive, and incrementally becomes more expensive as smart contracts get more complex. So it's not just simple transactions that we're sending back and forth. With synthetic asset protocols, there's a lot of steps and contracts that are involved, which means that the transaction costs get incrementally higher. And so we recognize that kind of as a problem. And our kind of big key here is that we keep, Linear is an ERC20 based token, but we basically do all of our transactions on Binance Smart Chain. One, because the TPS is substantially larger, and two, BNB prices have gone up quite a lot. So our costs have gone up a bit, but they're still substantially cheaper than our competitors on the Ethereum side. So our largest competitor, I think Synthetics, if you use their protocol to basically build and create synthetic assets, it probably costs you a few $100 US. For us, it's probably at most, 10 to 15 US. Okay. And so for us, we're trying, our biggest thing right now is that we solve the scalability issue. Okay. And we have more functionality on the exchange. So the user experience when you're actually trading is more like trading on your normal exchange, right? So we try to have that in there. The prices update every minute or so. So as we continue to push along, we bring more trading functionality in place. We bring more type of assets. We'll soon be able to have stocks and synthetics and exposure to things out in the real financial world. That will come very soon. And so that's kind of what we focus on, right? And being cross-chain compatible, we have a bridge in place. So if you really want to bridge yourself back to ERC20 and Ethereum, you fully can do that. And so right now, that's kind of the main selling point for Linear is that we solve scalability.
Yeah, I can remember this kind of like BSC transition, right? That you literally just bridged and then started operating on the BSC, the Binance Smart Chain, and there's, as you said, while BNB price kind of like we're just staying down there, kind of like peacefully, not really skyrocketing. This was of definitely lower cost, as you said, right? So speaking of the cost and of the limitations, of the growth, let's say, what is there really that makes it so hard to scale? Like, is it regulatory? Is it pretty much like just tokenomics? Is it the overall financial, system, not even financial system, but financial situation on the planet, the wars and everything. What makes it hard? What does it make it hard for Linear Finance to scale, in your opinion?
I think a lot of it is, once we've gone through and built this out, we work on challenge of building a community in place. From a regulatory perspective, we are decentralized, so and we're going to have the DAO set up. So hopefully we won't hit any type of regulatory hurdles. Okay, but a large part of it is user education, because as I'm sure as you have essentially been using linear finance, it does take a little bit of figuring out how to use Builder, how to build a Liquid USD and then use Liquid USD to purchase your synthetic assets, how to manage your collateral ratio, your P ratio at the end of the day, and so a lot of our time is spent doing that, is spent working on acquiring users and user education. So we put a large amount of time in that. We also put a large amount of time into aftermarket support. So if you are a linear user, new user, and you have issues, you can come into our Discord, and 24/7 there are well-trained admins that will go ahead and help you get through your technical issues if you have any. And if it cannot be solved, those issues get logged and sent back to home base here, and we try to solve those within 24 to 48 hours. So we really pride ourselves on the user experience. And we hopefully with that we can overcome and actually get more users at the end of the day, because right now, I think the core target market is still crypto users. I think a lot of the users that we think, or everybody says, oh, we're going to have a whole influx of users from traditional finance coming in. I'm not sure, I believe in that too, but I think that's just a little bit farther down the line, right? So maybe you can ask your friends who are, heavily invested in traditional finance world if they've ever tried DeFi and if they find it easy to use. And if you look into ourselves or to other protocols, it's actually not that easy, right? It's not very easy to transition over unless you've really done your research and you've done some trial and error, actually use the DeFi protocol. So I think that's kind of the big scalability problem that a lot of protocols end up facing.
So you mean, if I understand it correctly, apart from, let's say, the technical, technical, aspects that make it hard, let's not focus on that. Is it really, what do you say, educational aspects that you really need to educate people on, how to use it, that really kind of like limits in the major extent?
I think that, like I said, I think this is something that everybody faces. I think that's a big part of it is user education. If we can solve user education and make it extremely simple, make the UI UX extremely simple and easy for use, the market opens up. We get a whole new tranche of users at the end of the day, and we're just not stealing market share from each other, right? From the other synthetic asset protocols. I really think so. I mean, think about it, right? If you go and you look at any type of DeFi protocol, can you honestly tell me that once you open up the page, that is extremely simple and easy to understand? When you open, right? I mean, hey, I'm a big fan of things like of Curve, and if you go to Curve, really, are you going to understand how to use it? Like, right? So I think that's something that we'll eventually all have to end up facing at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, again, I can see so much simplicity just being put, up on your website or about, the builder itself, because it definitely looks completely different to what I remembered from the past couple of months, right? Before the overall upgrades came, to the UX and UI side. And again, this is another note, when I say, publicly on Twitter that I literally just log in and check, the builder or whatnot, and that I actually just actively use linear finance, I truly mean that, And what I personally love about it, again, is that you can literally just, kind of like, again, go back and forward, to the Binance Smart Chain and then the Ethereum Smart Chain, if you to the Ethereum, smart contracts, if you will, you can literally just manage your pledge ratio, of course, right? This like if you want to participate, like I have about what is it, like 870,000, something like this, almost locked, for pretty much like just being there of the total rewards kind of like just being staked. I mean, that were staked, right? Those are kind of like major part of the rewards. But most importantly, you see, like, or even I see, how much it simplified over the time. And from what kind of like what I imagine, for me also being to some extent the builder, let's say, for having my own company, my own brands, and managing the Birb Nest and whatnot, okay, along with Yellow Block. I mean, we really participate and see how this space improves. And what really kind of like caught my attention with you guys was, to start with, your very help, Kevin. I can remember from the very beginning that whenever I had any, again, technical issues or just some technical questions, you were there always to help and support. That's very, very kind of like natural thing, as it seems, but so many projects would never offer that. So many projects would never really just commit to such an extent that they are there for you, right? So you apparently eventually feel like you're left all alone, which I never had any such a case like this with you. So that is definitely very, very big. Very big hats off, to you, Kevin, for managing all that. But also, again, meeting this, I believe, on one hand, you have those technical kind of like just clarity, this technical clarity on the user end, and the educational aspects that come from the project side. And when you meet somewhere in between, perhaps, this is where the miracles happen, right? This is where the real conversion happens, and this kind of like transition to the DeFi. So it's not perhaps about just the educational aspects, just like you mentioned. It's also about improving parallelly, this well, the overall simplicity of using, right, DeFi. Now that makes it so effective in your very case. And speaking, of the overall, again, overall, let's say DeFi, put within the context of global finance, there's been so much going on around the term that is called digital economies, right? The digital economies, perhaps new monetary digital systems. So many countries are actually announcing, one after another, their digital currencies, right? Not the synthetic assets, they're real digital currencies. Like there's so much cash being printed right now, limitlessly and endlessly by central banks. And well, from my personal point of view, it may actually just end up in a situation where all of the cash holdings that we have, they may go worthless at one point. We may repeat on some global major scale, the phenomenon that happened in Zimbabwe the other day, where literally there was so much cash, there was such a hyperinflation that people were really literally like, pulling their trolleys, with piled with cash to buy their like breakfast, vegetables or something. And this somehow may all have to do with the digital economies. Again, that's my sort of like a personal opinion. I always may be right, wrong, but most importantly, again, digital economies. Do you guys have some, like linear finance? Do you have some longer term plans where you really define right now, or talk to some institutions, or even plan to work with I don't know, with some centralized units like banks, or on the smooth transition and really global adoption of the digital financial services from you, digital economies? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The world is actually changing into more of a digital economy. Like you said, lots of countries now are looking at doing digital currencies. But at the end of the day, these are just digital versions of visual versions of fiat, which is still controlled by the central banks, right? So all the issues, like you mentioned, about printing too much money, inflation, it doesn't go away. Those are always still going to be there. But that's a negative. The positive about it is now that they've had these, it brings more visibility to the decentralized finance space, because obviously we have things like stable coins, which are still backed by fiat dollars, other tokens, in which which people now become more accustomed to being to having digital currency, right? So I think it's great that they have those, that countries are coming out with them. Do I think that it's going to help bring them and solve other issues such as the issues that plague the current fiat system? Probably not. Gives us visibility. Okay, how we as linear finance connect back into the old financial world goes to figuring out how to transition users that have old financial assets into the DeFi world, the DeFi space. So if you have trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we bring users over and trying to think about how to get them over with their existing current assets, right? How to bridge them over with their existing fiat or with their existing stock portfolio. How do we go ahead and do that? Do we tokenize their stocks and then give them stable coins? We can look at things like that, right? Those are the kind of bridges that we need to build. Okay, and for us at Linear, we will have multi-collateral staking later on, but that's multi-collateral staking for crypto assets, and then we'll start looking into figuring out how to get real assets and get those staked. And so that we can issue Lena tokens or our stablecoin off of those, right? And that's kind of really where the big breakthrough is going to be for DeFi, is when we as a whole ecosystem figure out how to bridge people over. And I know that a lot of the borrower lenders are talking to banks and other financial institutions. For us, we talk to asset managers, both on an index basis, to figure out how to do synthetic versions of certain ETFs and things as such. So we're trying to reach out to the old financial world and find a way to bridge users over so they're used to it, right? And to also comply with any type of regulations that are in place right now.
Yeah, speaking of those regulations, and all the improvements that still have to be made, like the future of DeFi, like what, in your opinion, for you're working with linear finance, and participating actively, in this ecosystem, like what's there yet to be achieved in your opinion? Like what needs to change for the future of DeFi?
I think at certain points in time, for ourselves and all our protocols, it's becoming more professionalized, tidying ourselves up so we don't have issues like hacks or exploits in place. And once we can get those types of issues solved and tidy things up, we'll have to figure out ways to self-regulate ourselves. So we don't have issues with people doing rug pulls or protocols that do bad things, right? So once we find ways to get rid of all the bad hombres, it becomes more appeasing for institutionals to come in. And once we can actually achieve that, that's kind of where I think things really, really start taking off, particularly for the old traditional users. When they start seeing people like Fidelity coming in and working on custody solutions or doing a Bitcoin ETF, and them dabbling themselves into investing into DeFi, we get more and more of those, and this ultimately starts becoming a bigger ball as it rolls down the hill.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I mean, on my end, let's say from the investor's point of view, from the user point of view as well, there is definitely, again, big improvement that needs to be made on this simplification side, as you said. Like if you go to this carved out, or something, this like UX, UI it's very important, right? It needs to be somehow like bulletproof for if we want to just make this I wanted to say positive virus, right? But we need to kind of like watch out with these viruses. If we want this positive, just gospel to spread across the globe, about the DeFi, we definitely have to make sure that the very, very basic, how to call that, users, the day-to-day users, that they cannot log, into a DeFi platform, let's say, right, like this Carve or something, and that the very first impression that they have is like, okay, is somebody trying to hack me, or am I? Do I need to be a coder for that, or do I need to be, some programmer or something? It's like we really have to address the most basic kind of like utility aspects for those most basic type of people that just day-to-day users, right? And again, speaking of it as well, what plans does Linear Finance have for us coming up in 2021 before the year ends?
Yeah, so like I've mentioned before, we will have, we're working on a number of, obviously, exchange improvements. So there will be additional functionalities for traders, okay? But in terms of other large improvements, we are working also on doing yield farming initiatives. So we have a linear vault that will be coming out. And so for those ones, you can actually use that to generate some yield. And there'll be some additional vaults in place for users. Okay. And we'll try to make that as easy, as seamless as we can for everybody. And then ultimately, we have more public blockchains out there. Polkadot is another large one. We've committed to building on top of Polkadot through Moonbeam. So right now we're in the process of doing testnet with Moonbeam. And so we will pretty certain that once Moonbeam gets their parachain out or gets their parachain, we'll be able to do an implementation of Linear on Polkadot. And so for all the users and the ecosystem within Polkadot will be connected, so that people can actually trade synthetic assets on Polkadot. And hopefully, we'll get additional scaling, transaction speeds, and reduce costs in that base. But it's a whole new market, right? Because we'll have a whole set of new users that are kind of core Polkadot users that we'll be able to connect to, right?
Hey.
Yeah, I think to your point before about about what people see when they come in, and DeFi, there's no standards right now in place, right? If you look at Ethereum, if a user comes in and he starts doing a transaction, it'll probably cost them like $50, $60, $50, $70 on Uniswap. And people get scared about that. That freaks me out. I don't want to go ahead. I don't want to go use Uniswap and pay that much, no matter how much how much I'm purchasing. So unless you're a very big whale, okay, then maybe that's not an issue. But Ethereum has scaling issues, and people are working on different L2 solutions. There's different side chains, and at the end of the day, the worst fear I have for Ethereum is that it just becomes disparate systems, disparate protocols and systems all over the place, and there's no bridges in between. And so it kills kind of the composability. And so I always think that maybe protocols need to band together and figure out, hey, look, this is the standard we're going to use for an L2. Everybody work on this, so we can all maintain composability for our users at the end of the day. But we're just not at that point yet. Hopefully, we will later on in the future. But for Linear, we care about our users, so we like to have the immediate effect. So that's why we built on Binance Smart Chain. We will be on Polkadot, hopefully when Polkadot releases near the end of the year, when they release. So those are the kind of plans for 2021. We will have a substantially larger number of investable assets, both in crypto as well as from the old financial system or old financial world later on. We will have those in probably in a 2 or 3 months' time.
I love it. And I can only confirm, Kevin, on top of what you said, that you really take things immediately, that you really want to meet the expectations of the users. And that is definitely big, hats off to you and to your entire team. Congratulations. And before I let you go, because you've been so generous for the entire time with your knowledge, with your experience, we have the custom on the Nest Show podcast that we leave our viewers and listeners with some special takeaway message. So what is your takeaway message to all the viewers and listeners?
Yeah, I think people should know that obviously we're very committed to linear finance. We've always been builders at heart, and so we're constantly working on building and putting out improvements in the protocols and communicating to our users and providing support. And so obviously the community is the largest part about it, is our most important part about linear, right? I mean, you guys stake and drive the protocol at the end of the day. We really value everybody, such as yourselves, who have been with us since the beginning. And I think we will have a number of surprises coming out over the next few months. And I think the people that stay and stay with us along the way, you'll be able to kind of reap the rewards of us building. And I think we'll find ways to reward those types of users, right? So people that are loyal and hang out, ultimately you can come and try and you can stake, you can leave up, it's obviously up to you. We're not providing financial advice. But for those that are loyal customers, hey, look, we find ways to reward it. And we appreciate every type of investor that comes in, short-term, long-term, people that stake, people that don't stake, people that come and trade. We build this for you, and we continue to build no matter what market cycle it is. We don't stop building if the market is bad. We continue, and we're very, very focused on getting improvements out and getting our assets out there.
Yeah, amazing. So if I read that correctly, to support and incentivize all the new users, you're going to send so many Lambos for each and every single user and influencers like myself. So I shall expect the Lambo right in front of my door anytime soon, right? I love it. I love it. Kevin, that was definitely good takeaway message. I really think all the viewers and listeners appreciate your time, your knowledge. DeFi is a very hot topic, everybody. And to make sure you stay up to date with all the latest news and with all those amazing people like Kevin today, make sure you subscribe, make sure you put the thumbs up and comment this very video. And guys, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin of Lightning Finance has been your guest today to the Nest Show podcast. Thank you for your time, Kevin.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
YFDAI is democratizing finance by creating the most secure, transparent, and user-friendly ecosystem of DeFi products. To learn more, visit thebirbnest.com/YFDAI. Radix is the first Layer 1 protocol built specifically to serve DeFi. More information at thebirbnest.com/Radix. Globe is a crypto derivatives exchange offering up to 100 times leverage on crypto and DeFi perpetual contracts with Bitcoin collateral. Sign up today at thebirbnest.com/Globe. Howdo is the social blockchain powering the decentralized social apps of the future. For more information, visit thebirbnest.com/howdo.
I'd like to thank our listeners for joining this episode of The Nest Show. If you've appreciated the depth and breadth of what you've heard with us today, subscribe to our podcast and find our landing page at thebirbnest.com. We have a vibrant Discord community which acts as our central hub of operations, and we welcome you to join us at thebirbnest.com/Discord. We also offer an extensive free bulletin on emerging crypto market trends, exclusive undervalued gem reports, and in-depth expert technical and fundamental analysis at thebirbnest.com/bulletin. We always appreciate engagement from our community, which of course means liking the video and subscribing to our page, where we insist on bringing you the highest quality content available. Also, we're happy to incorporate tips and topics from our listeners and encourage you to email us at thenestshow@thebirbnest.com. This podcast is brought to you by the Birb Nest. Thank you, and trade on.